My name is Sid Butler. I live in New York City. I started a label called French Kiss Records, and I'm here in Austin, Texas, having a great time. French Kiss Records was a label I started in 1999, originally with a guy named Juan Masterio, who played bass in Brainiac. Phenomenal band, but he quickly left and got great jobs out in California working for video production companies, and that's what he does now. He's a video director. Very talented. And then the reason why we started French Kiss is the band I play in, Les Avifav. At the time, music was in a cyclical pattern, and it was sort of post-Nirvana, and all the major labels had gone out and signed all the bands that they thought that might sign like or make money like Nirvana, and no one did. So they kind of switched their energies and focuses to electronic or dance or pop or Britney Spears, or sort of the boy bands came back. And long story short is our bands, the rock bands, kind of died in the late 90s, and we couldn't really find a home. Actually, the aforementioned Brainiac, the singer, had passed away, and that was sort of what I felt was sort of the end of the focus on interesting rock music. And then sort of the trend then picked up later, about four years later. At that time, French Kiss has sort of had its ground and its foundation started. So it was by accident that we started it, but I also grew up in D.C. and sort of the old Discord mantra, manifesto. I sort of took that and Touch and Goes and Sub Pops and sort of formed French Kiss from all these different other great labels. It was actually really exciting. I mean, basically, just sort of interning and being in the business, so interested in the business for so long, I felt really comfortable doing it. But just putting out one record was really easy. I was like, yeah, this is so easy. What is everybody freaking out about? And now, almost 30 records later, sometimes it is easy, and most of the time it's a pain in the butt. But it's a great pain in the butt. Initially, we sold it, the band Les Avifav went on tour and just sold the record, and that's how we made money, and that's how, and it was easy, and CDs had just come out, and it was relatively cheap to manufacture them. And at this time, 7 inches in vinyl was sort of going the way of the dodo, and that's a whole other argument, which I never think they will go away, but it became so expensive to manufacture that CDs were so cheap. So it was nice to sell CDs and T-shirts, and you could survive. But that sort of became the way of, you go out and tour and you bust your butt, and that was it. But focusing on the label, it was really, as the label grew and licensing and distribution came to play, it was really hard because I didn't really know the distribution game, and a lot of the small distributors would pick up our records on consignment. So you'd send out, 100 CDs or 300 CDs or 1,000 CDs, and then you'd have to wait until those were sold, and if not, then they were returned. So you didn't know when your money was coming in. So as you get bigger, the bigger distributors really wouldn't pay attention to you unless you had a catalog. So if you had 1 or 2 records, there were a million record labels that had 1 or 2 records, so why should they pick you up? So it cost a bunch of money and a lot of credit card debt to go into putting out a lot of records just so I could approach a bigger distributor and say, listen, I have 20 records or 10 records or whatever it was. And then they sort of took you more seriously. And then you got bigger distributors and you moved up the chain, so to speak. But the distribution game as a whole, the bigger you go, the more of a headache it is. But it's also incredibly necessary. And then they then go and sell your product to retail stores. And then, they try to sell your record. But the retail game is a racket, I think. Most record stores are real estate, so you're buying, where your records place, so to speak. So if right when you walk into a record store and it says this store's favorite records or the best records right when you walk in, that costs a lot of money. Listening stations cost a lot of money, and a lot of people don't realize that. So a lot of bands how come we don't have a listening station, or how come we don't have that? I'm like, well, because it costs $10,000, and you guys have only sold 1,000 records. I'm not going to spend all this money. So it's sort of this catch-22. So then I question why record stores go out of business, because they're making all this money, and they also have the right to return the records. So after 6 months, if the record hadn't sold, they can return it back to the distributor. Then the distributor charges you and sends it back to you, and you have a dead product. So it's a total hustle, constantly. So if a band doesn't tour, then the record sits in the bin and no one cares. You know, why should you get in your car and drive to the record store and buy the record when the band hasn't even gotten in their van and played a show?
So are you taking advantage of digital distribution?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We signed up with this service called eMusic, and they've been great to us. And more and more every month that you get a statement, more and more people are downloading and happy to pay for music, which is nice, because it's so much thievery out there. But it's it's definitely a trend of the future. There's no question. And how to be creative and market yourself to that generation of people who know how to use computers so well. I think the New York Times called them the millennials or something. There's some sort of Gen X new name for them, people that were born with CD players, grew up with DVD players, that are now being freshmen in high school or seniors in high school about to go to college. You know, they have their own language and they know everything about the sort of technology. And it's scaring the hell out of these older dinosaurs that are so used to doing a different approach to selling things. They don't know how to advertise to them because it's all word of mouth. So how do you advertise to someone in a way, creatively, so that they get excited about the word of mouth and pass it on to their friends? My band played here 10 years ago, and at the time it was truly a place to be discovered. You know, all these indie bands or bands that had nothing, no product, no nothing, no finances, got in their beat-up junk van and drove down here hoping to find a label. And now I think it's changed dramatically. I think most bands, I would say 80% or 85% of the bands have already signed to either major labels or to like powerful indie labels. And it's just a way of labels to sort of showcase their product. Like, here's my new blah, 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 if I was selling T-shirts or at a trade convention. And that's kind of sad, I think, but I'm also guilty of it since we had our showcase last night. And there's also this, you know, before there weren't, you know, Capitol Records didn't have a showcase. You know, to say, here are cool new bands. They have enough money, you'd think, to showcase their bands on MTV and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of lost its spirit a little bit. And the bands don't make any money, which is also kind of sad. South by Southwest makes so much money. The city makes so much money, the bands get paid like $250. Whether you're Built to Spill or you're, you know, Ding Dong Johnsonburg, you make $250 or you get a badge. So, you know, how much money does it cost for a badge? $400 and something, $500? You know, it's just, there's a lot of money out there. And I think the band should be getting paid for their hard work. And they're not. So that's my negative about South by Southwest. My positive is that you have so many people from around the world. You know, you have the East Coast and West Coast converging on Austin, and it's great. Just, you know, everyone wants to see your band. But it's also a funny thing, because I remember when we were touring a lot, we played a show somewhere in Arizona or something, and all these kids came to we went to a party afterwards, and they were like, hey man, how was your show? I'm like, oh, it was really good. Why did you show up? Oh, because it would save my money to see you guys at South by Southwest. I'm like, but you could have seen us for $5 in your hometown. Why didn't you come and see us and support us on the road? We don't care about South by Southwest. And they were like, because I get to see 100 million other bands. And that was kind of cool, but at the same time I thought kind of lame. You know, whatever. But yeah, South by Southwest is awesome. It's fun. It's a big schmooze fest, and usually the weather's fantastic, and you gorge yourself on barbecue and try to stay awake. But it's awesome, but it's, you know, it's got its negatives. Mostly it's usually to two different kinds of groups. One is to the kid who lives in Lubbock, Texas or something, that doesn't get to see, you know, it's like I live in New York, so most 99% of these bands that are here will be going through New York or LA at some point in their career. But if you live in a small town, you don't get to see those bands, so it's really exciting for, you know, Mary Kelly to come down and see, oh, there's Built to Spill, or there's Plastic Constellations, and oh, look, there's Morrissey. I mean, it's a gorge of, you know, a cornucopia of great music. And that's really cool. And then, on the other hand, a medium label like mine, you're meeting so many other people from the industry that, you know, can help license your music to movies or TV or to commercials or for video games or other types of the music business that can help sort of supplement and help fund your label. And then you have to figure out who are the cool people that, you don't want to sell your song to some crappy movie, or not, or do you want to sell your song to something else to make money, and everyone's trying to get your music for free, and this becomes this whole argument. But you're basically trying to present your wares to two different people. One is to the kid who actually gives a shit, and the other is to people who you're trying to almost hustle as well. So you're trying to present something honest to someone who cares, and then hustle yourself to someone who really doesn't. Yeah, just, it's, if someone's making a movie and wants to use one of your songs in the movie, it's like, they can take advantage of you, but since you're not a major label, you don't have a lot of lawyers behind you, you don't have a lot of clout, so they'll offer you, hey, I'll give you, $500 to give me the song in this movie. And you're like, well, $500 is nothing. I mean, give me $10,000 and that'll help the band, and I can give that to the band and say, here, you guys just made $10,000 off your song, go buy better equipment, or go stay in a hotel for once, or, buy your girlfriend something nice. I mean, we're doing it to help our bands out, not just to have a song in a movie. But there's a lot of hustling going on, and people lay a lot of foundation. And on the flight over here, it was actually really funny. Every person on the plane was coming down here. And once the seatbelt sign, people could walk around, everyone got up and started handing cards out and ordering drinks, and stewardesses were going crazy. They were so angry, like, you gotta sit down, and people getting their stuff out and leaving it open and playing video games and, passing, oh yeah, see this showcase, and highlighting things for people. And it was like we chartered this, 50 strangers had chartered this plane, and by the end of the plane ride, everyone was best friends and, drunk and stupid and couldn't wait to, get out there and hustle. It's kind of a funny thing. It's an argument I have with a lot of people, and it's really just, for me, it's black and white. Lasawi Faf started playing shows, and we made some money, but not much. Like, you start out making $50 or $100 a show, and you just save it. And then I started saving it, and the band started saving it, and then we said, hey, and since we did all of our own artwork, and we just did it and made, 1,000 CDs for $1,000. So we started by playing shows to make money, and then we sold T-shirts, because T-shirts were really cheap, and people were happy to support us. So as we started to build it that way, so totally grassroots, then we had enough money for CDs, and then you could sell the CDs for more, and they cost less, and then next thing you know, it started to build. And that's pretty much, I got a P.O. box, and then all of a sudden we went on tour. And a band's job is to go on tour. That's it. A label's job is to make sure the CDs are in the stores. So when the band goes on tour, some fan drives out to see you, and they don't have enough money at the show, then they can go to the record store. But if a band doesn't tour, then a label crashes. It's totally symbiotic. It's like, we fight with bands that don't tour. It's literally crushing and devastating if a band doesn't go on tour. And every band's like, yeah, I want to go on tour, I want to go on tour. And touring is really hard. America's a big place, and Europe's a big place, and they have dreams of that it's a sexy, crazy thing, but it's long, 12-hour drives, and you smell, and you get mad at your bandmates because they farted wrong. So it's just this really arduous process, but it's absolutely necessary. I mean, Fugazi toured 10 months out of a year. The Mars Volta on tour right now for a year and a half. The Strokes did like a month in England alone, which is the size of New Jersey. So there's a sense of, if you want to be a big band and lay a foundation and sell yourself to people, you have to go out and work it. And there's no video, there's no nothing that's going to sell your band more than touring. You have a concentrated room of people, whether it's 10 people or 100 people, that are there to give you the chance. They want to like you. So all you have to do is play your songs and sell it and be a good band. And your band will be good. It's like Hollywood. Hollywood's desperate for a good story. It's not like, oh, if I wrote a screenplay, if I wrote Romeo and Juliet, they would put it out. I mean, I'm being totally guessing, but every time I've read anything, it's like they're so desperate for a good story that if one comes along, then they freak out. It's the same in the music business. If you're a good band and if you're competent, you get on the road and show that you're competent, people get really excited about it. You have to sell yourself, and When you go on tour, you're selling yourself to a room of people that want to give you the chance. Because it's, there's so many bands out there. I mean, like, I think 30,000 records came out last year. So you're competing, at 2006, you're competing with 30 other thousand bands plus MySpace, plus bands that didn't have a release officially, plus, I mean, it's just insane, and records come out every Tuesday. So imagine if you're in a magazine or the newspaper and you get one block of print. That's great, because you're in competition with so many other bands. So but people just don't know the behind-the-scenes stuff. So, how come we're not on the front page of Spin, or how come we're not this? And, I think Modest Mouse had sold like 150,000 records before they were even mentioned. It takes a lot of hard work. They lived in their van for 10 years. They didn't go to college. They wrote songs and got in their van, and they slept in their van, and they went on tour. And that's, so when they signed to a major, they had this insane foundation of, hundreds of thousands of kids across the country that were excited about Modest Mouse. So that's why they're as big as they are. It's just, you have to tour. It's end of story. You have to tour. If you're in a band and you don't want to tour, then don't submit your record to a label. It's rude. It helps line all the ducks in a row. Like, the press will come out, you submit a record 4 months before press, before the record's released, so that you have, all the major magazines like Rolling Stone and Spin and stuff have a 3-month lead time. So you have to get, and you're competing with every other major label record for that one spot. And then you have the fanzines and the weeklies and things like that, but 4 months later your record comes out. If you don't go on tour, all that 4 months of hard work of the publicist is a complete waste of time. And all the press then that comes back to us, then the label takes to the distributor and says, hey, look at all the great press. It's like this band, The Hold Steady. They got such tremendous press, it was easy to sell the record to the distributor and say, hey, they were on cover of the Village Voice, or they were top 10 band of this, or here or there. So it helps gain momentum. And if the band, then when the record comes out, doesn't go on tour, then it just crashes. And you have to think of really creative ways to sort of keep people's interest peaked. But the band's job is to write the songs, make the record, and go on tour. That's the job. And if you don't want to do that, then don't do it. Everyone in my family went to business school, and I'm like the weird kid that went to art school. So I have a lot of sort of support on the business side, not so much on the other side. But yeah, it's just weird. It's like, again, going back to Ian MacKaye, here's a guy who started a label and played in a band and did it. And I grew up with that. So it seems comfortable and familiar to have that mentor when I was growing up, be such a positive mentor. And, I can't say, he's just really one of the greatest human beings on the planet. He's the kind of guy that remembers your name, every time he sees you. There's no like, oh, hey, what's your name again? It's, his new band, The Evens, played Coachella a couple of years ago, and I was backstage and came right off the stage. And there's like all these, huge Red Hot Chili Peppers were there. They're all like, get all excited to see Ian MacKaye, and he walks right over, gives me a big hug. He's like, hey, Sid, how are you? What's going on? It just gave me chills. He's just a fantastic human being. So when I grew up with that scene and that community in D.C., it just seemed an easy sort of, that's how you do it. I never wanted to just be a bassist in a band. It seems so, I want to know everything about what's going on with my music, and so do my bandmates. They want to know every part of where their art is going. So it just seemed natural. We want to know what the process is. The whole sort of, the thing that gets us the most excited is exposing the apparatus of something. It's like whether it's art or music or business or anything, it's how does this work? Tim, who's the singer of LaSalle 5, is obsessed with taking things apart and seeing how they work and putting them back together. And it's just sort of a way of thinking about the world. How does that work? Why does it make that cool sound? Or, so to not know anything about the business side is shooting yourself in the foot. When a band's like, I just want to play bass. That's my job, is play the bass. I'm the bassist in the band. Like, dude, there's so much going on around you that you should know about, because it's your life. You're the one that's making that 12-hour drive, not your manager, not your lawyer, not your A&R guy. Your A&R guy sitting in an office in Hollywood, you know, getting coffees from interns and saying, yeah, you guys are awesome. And every once in a while, get on a plane and fly around and say, you guys are awesome. But the band is the band. The band is out there working it. So you should know everything, every detail about how your record's being sold and, how you're being represented. Because you might be being represented as, a pop punk band, and you think of yourself as a heavy metal band. So you need to know how, it's really important how you come across. To not know that is just kind of lame. It's a constant argument. You really have to know at the time when you're presented with something, how do I feel about this now? Or how do I feel about this in a year? Or how do I feel about this down the road? How is this going to affect me or my band or French Kiss down the road? And it takes a lot of talking and communicating and figuring things out. Yeah, but it's important, not to give it away. And understand why, if you are going to give it away, understand why you're doing it. I think it's expectations. I think there's a great example of this band, Clap Your Hands and Say Yeah. Here's a band that had a lot of sort of buzz in New York. I went to see them and I passed on them. And every label person I know that went to see them had passed on them. And at the time, they weren't ready. And they kind of rushed it. And then they went to the studio and made this amazing, it's a great record. And bit everyone in the ass. And just kind of laughed their way to the bank. And I applaud them. I think it's great. I'm really, really happy for them and their success. But, for them, they learned how the business works by no one really caring, but they believed in themselves, and it happened. That's very rare. And now they're on tour, and they're busting their ass, and they're selling the record. And they've sold a lot of records, and sort of the inertia takes over. And that's great. And there are bands that need a major label because they're retarded. They just can't tie their shoes, and they need everyone, and they really want to be famous. That's all they care about. They want chicks, and they want to be famous. And they have tattoos, and hey, this is what I am. I'm a rock star. But the true musician, I'm being an asshole, but I think there's a balance between, I think it's about expectations. I think if you have the itch in the morning to wake up and write music, then you could be on a major or you could be on an indie. If you have an itch to wake up and get laid and be a rock star, then you should roll the dice with a major label because they'll take care of everything for you, and then you'll become a slave to them, but you will become a rock star for 10 minutes. I mean, not to be a jerk, but can you tell me what the bass player of any huge pop punk band looks like, or his name? No. You know what they look like, but you don't know his fucking name or any identity. But if I mention, Jay Mascis, oh, that's fucking Jay Mascis. Or there's, whatever. The point is, it's like true musicians have the itch and wake up, and if they sign to an indie, indies stink and have. I'm sorry. Let me start over again. The best progression, I would say, is to sign to an indie label in the beginning. And as your band grows and as you work out who you are and who your identity is, and it fits, then you'll have the decision 2 or 3 records later to go to a major label. And by that time, you'll know what the music label's about, and you'll have more power at the major labels than to just go to a major. A major label's so complicated and such a giant clusterfuck that it's hard to understand it. But if you start at an indie, then you understand what the person at the indie really cares and is busting their ass for you, and they have no money. And then when you go to a major, a lot of the great things happen. And I really don't want to bag on a major because I think majors are important. And I think there's certain A&R people and certain major labels that are very supportive of their bands and really care about their bands. But one of the problems with majors is that you might be my A&R guy and I might love you to death and we sign with you and then you get fired. And no one cares about our band because you are the one who really cared about us and championed us, and now we're just floating. and we can't get our record back, and no one cares, and we're dropped. And on top of that, if I made another band, that major label would get first shot at that band too. So then you're sort of pigeonholed. You have no freedom. So your sort of career is balanced on a lot of different elements. And in an indie world, you have full control over everything. And it's usually a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split, so that if the label's making money, then you're making money. If you haven't made any money, that means the label hasn't made any money on your record, and you're all in the same boat. You're also just sort of plugged into a machine on a major. As an indie, they'll sort of fight for your record as long as it's there. Like at French Kiss, we're still trying to sell records from a year ago or 2 years ago. So we're always like submitting that and trying to keep that record alive. But both have its pluses and negatives. I can't really bash the indie or say the indie's the best, or say the same thing about a majors. But Built to Spill are on a major, and Modest Mouse are on a major, and they're doing well. Never seem to be very happy. But there are a lot of bands on majors that are really unhappy, and same with indies. I think it's about expectations, who you are, and how do you want your career to go. My best advice would to be signed to a really strong indie and try to own your own publishing, because the money's in publishing for an artist. I think it's really important excuse me, that bands own their own publishing as songwriters, and because you get paid. And if you sign a publishing company or you own your own publishing, then it's like if you sign to Warner Brothers and they own your publishing, then they're making money. They'll submit your song to a movie or to a ringtone or something, and they get the money. You don't. So if you own your own publishing, then you wrote the song. You spent the time to write the song. You deserve to own that creativity. And to give that away is a crime. So most bands make their money off of publishing deals, because every time that song's played, they get the right they get paid for being the songwriter. And if someone covers your song down the road, then you get paid. The band who covered it doesn't really get anything. So it's really important. And there's some 3 or 4 companies that pretty much do all publishing, but I highly recommend owning your own publishing. And it's complicated, so do your research on it, and I can teach a class on publishing. So, but yeah, long story short, go to a strong indie like Matador, French Kiss, Sub Pop, Touch and Go, but own your own publishing, and you'll be happy as can be. I think the future holds lifestyle. I think that labels or any business needs to create lifestyles or places where people want to be part of, almost like clubs. But I don't know if that's the right word to use. Like, going back to the record store chain again, you have Virgin, where people want to go and hang out. They have a DJ there playing live, and you can get coffee, you can get magazines, and people are like, check out this band. They sell clothes and DVDs, so that you want to check it out. You want to be part of that culture that he has created. Even if you fly on Virgin Airlines, it's a culture. Hey, here's your free headphones, and here's your this, and here's your that, and here's some socks, and you feel taken care of. You feel like you're part of something cool and creative. Versus a Sam Goody, where you walk in and it's really cold, and you don't really want to be there, and no one really cares, and there are crappy posters on the wall, you can't find what you want, and there's no selection, and you just you leave, you don't feel good. So I think the future just sort of holds that concept. I think labels such as Touch and Go or Sub Pop or French Kiss or sort of indies, the reason why I think have survived and are so strong is because they've created this little culture that people want to be a part of. It's bigger than just putting out a record or listening to a record. So whether you're downloading music in the future or getting it however you're getting it from a place that you trust and that you feel like a part of. And I think that's where the majors go wrong. I think they exclude their fans more than, they're trying to sell them something that I don't know if the kid wants. It's like if you're a kid and you're 12 years old and you have an allowance, and you get $20 a week, and you go to the record store, what are you going to spend your $20 on? Or you could, if Britney Spears made a better record, then they'd buy the whole record. I think people want to buy music. It's not that people don't like music, and I think they're happy to pay for it. They just want to pay for quality. If you don't have a certain amount of money, and you can go online and download one song, the hit, then it costs you $1. Then you have $19 more to go buy a DVD or buy some clothes or go to a movie. And then you have another demographic that's 35 to 50 that grew up with records and has no access to music at all. How do you sell to them? So I feel like it's really an important thing of the future is to sort of sell a lifestyle, not really a lifestyle, just sort of a community of cool almost, if that makes any sense. I do. I think MySpace is an amazing tool, and I'm fascinated why it beat Friendster, and I'm fascinated why it beat all these other ones. Whether it's the colors, people didn't like the yellow and the white. Whether it's the blue and white that worked, the fact that they can. I just don't. It's so fascinating to me, and that's all. I'm just fascinated by MySpace and how powerful it is as a tool, and. I went to London a couple weeks ago, and just MySpace, hey, I'm coming to London, and it had about 400 people being like, you can stay with me, blah, 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 and just to see that reaction instantly, that there's a support group of people who are paying attention to this tool, offering their house, offering to take me to dinner, just wanting to hang out was unbelievable. I mean, when French Kiss started, we had a Rolodex. There was no fucking email. There was nothing. And all of a sudden it was email, then it was this, and how to do this, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as technology gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you have to think of creative ways to keep it smaller. So that's the challenge of the future, I think. Well, obviously I like to talk about bands on my label, but there's two bands really on our label that I'm really excited about. One's called Thunderbirds Are Now, and the other's a band called The Plastic Constellations. Both are really young bands, and just bring it every night. Whether there's 10 people in the audience or 100 or 1,000, they give it 100%, and they sound great, and they're tight, and they go on tour, and they've done everything right. And last night at the showcase, a year ago, Thunderbirds played first in front of 10 people, and then within a year, because they've been touring for so long, they headline our showcase, and there's 200 people there. So it works. The system, if you line all your ducks in a row, it works. They're out there, they're busting their ass, they're being humble, they're being sweet, saying thank you, and not being assholes. They're not creating a distance when they play. They're inviting the room to join in with their fun and their music, which I think is really important. Bands that aren't on French Kiss that I think are phenomenal. There's this band called Arproot. They're from England, and they're great. The singer has very clever lyrics, very much inviting the crowd to be involved in his world. The band's pretty much a straight-up rock band, just phenomenal. I saw a band called the Cold Water Kids from California. I was blown away. I thought they were awesome. There's so many great bands right now. It's pretty unbelievable. It's kind of hard to keep up with them all. It's a cruel mistress, I should say. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And I'm totally blessed to be involved in it. And there's some amazing, wonderful, creative people in this world that I wouldn't change for anything. And there's part of this business that's so gross that you laugh at it. You're just like, I can't believe it. The lies and the deceit and the backstabbing is pretty unreal. I have a lot of scars on my body. A lot of people taking credit for things that they shouldn't take credit for, and a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I saw that band in London, and the band's never been to London, and there's so much lying that you realize, why are you lying? It stops you in your tracks. You're like, who are you as a person that you have to lie to me? Why didn't you just say, I've never heard of that band? But going back to the majors, people, in my experience, in the majors fail up. In my experience, the whole game is I told you so. There are people that work in A&R. They've never signed a band. They get paying a shitload of money, and their whole game is, I told you so. I told you about Nirvana. Here's my email, or here's my note to you, or here's my memo, or, I took credit for this, or I took credit for that. So that the major boss, who is in charge of this public company that trades stocks, can say, oh, well, I'm going to keep you alive because you heard about this band first, and we couldn't sign them because it was the band's problem. There are a lot of people that do that, and have a job, and don't do anything. They just sit in their office and fart around, and listen to demos, and their interns listen to demos, and it's just, that's the sad part of the business. Taking credit for other people's work is really sad. But I guess that's probably the same in a lot of businesses. I just don't know, since I'm only in the music business. On the music side, just don't give up on yourself. Just keep working hard. Just because at the time someone doesn't like your music, there's a lot of people out there that like music, and the people in your high school might not like it, but go on tour and someone in Arkansas might love it. So don't give up on yourself, and work hard to play your instrument and approach it creatively. Don't try to listen to the radio and say, oh, just because it's on the radio, that's my success. I gotta copy that. Really try to make your own music and go out there and show the world what you got. And don't be afraid to put in the hard work, because it's hard, but it's awesome. The rewards of being in a band on any size and touring, I've played in Rome, I've played in Serbia, I've played in Japan, I've played Australia. And those stories and those experiences I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. No business, no college, or nothing. And there's always a job. If the band doesn't work out, you can always find a job. There's always a job. Whether it's working as a school teacher or working as, fucking McDonald's, I don't know, but there's always a job somewhere. You'll find a job if your music career fails. But don't give up on yourself either. And communicate with your bandmates, because a lot of people don't know how to communicate, and me included. So make sure you put the hard work in, and you'll be rewarded in many ways. And for the business side, shit, man. Good luck. You're more than welcome to email me anytime, ask me any questions. But yeah, the business side is tricky. It's definitely politics. So good luck. It's super easy. It's www.frenchkissrecords.com. French Kiss Records plural. I think there's a French Kiss, just French Kiss is a porn site. So if you want to go there, that's totally cool. But French Kiss Records is where you'll find us.